Welcome to the Lodge. From the riverbanks to the end zones, we're diving deep into everything that matters most to the colony. You're listening to State of the Beavers. I'm your host, Brian, and whether you're a diehard alum, a nature enthusiast, or just here for the ecosystem, we've got you covered. Today on the show, we're breaking down the latest headlines, checking the pulse of the community, and asking the big questions that define our state today. Grab your gear, a beer, and settle in. It's time to gnaw through the noise. This is the State of the Beavers, starting right now.
All right, let's talk about the absolute pandemonium of college football's rivalry week. This was a weekend that didn't just shake things up, it threw the entire national championship picture into a blender, and honestly, we're still trying to figure out what came out the other side.
You know, in most sports, the season is a marathon. It's a slow burn. But in college football, nope. It's a tightrope walk over a canyon with no net. A single weekend, sometimes even a single play, can completely shatter a team's championship dreams. So let's dive into exactly how Rivalry Week just turned the entire postseason on its head.
To really, truly appreciate the earthquake that just hit, we first have to look at the landscape before the ground started shaking. So let's set the stage. This is what the college football playoff picture looked like right before all the chaos was unleashed.
So going into the week, things looked pretty solid, right? You had your undisputed powerhouse Georgia sitting comfortably at number 1. You had a fantastic story in Duke holding down that number 2 spot. And then you had the usual suspects, Ohio State, Michigan, Texas A&M, all circling in that top 6 with their eyes locked on a first-round playoff bye.
But the schedule? It was an absolute minefield. Just look at these matchups. We had several high-stakes rivalry games on the docket, and literally any one of them could have completely blown up the national picture. And remember, these aren't just games. This is pure, unfiltered history and hate, a battle for bragging rights and, in this case, a shot at the title.
And boy, did they blow it up. What's really wild is looking back at the betting odds, what the smart money thought was going to happen, and comparing them to the final scores. Let's walk through the games that caused the most damage.
First up, the big one, the game. Ohio State at Michigan. This was basically a coin flip according to Vegas. But Ohio State didn't just beat number 4 Michigan. They marched into the Big House, their arch-rival stadium, and laid down the law, winning by double digits and kicking them right out of the top 4.
And it wasn't just happening up north. Down in the Sunshine State, it was a similar story. Florida was only a tiny favorite at home, but they played like they were shot out of a cannon. They didn't just beat Florida State, they completely dismantled them, delivering a crushing blow to the Seminoles' playoff hopes. It just goes to show, in a rivalry game, you can throw the records right out the window.
And how about the battle for Texas? What an absolute nail-biter. This was another game that was a total toss-up, and the unranked Longhorns pulled off a stunner, taking down the 6th-ranked Aggies by just 2 points. That one sent shockwaves all through the Big 12.
But you want to hear the most shocking result of the weekend? For my money, this is it. Army, a huge 14.5-point underdog, didn't just geet number 25 UTSA, they pitched a shutout, 35-0. A ranked team scoring 0 points against an unranked rival. That, my friends, is the definition of rivalry week chaos.
And the hits just kept on coming. It felt like every time you looked up, another ranked team was in trouble. We had a wild 114-point shootout where number 16 Notre Dame fell to Stanford. Out west, number 20 USC lost the battle for LA to an unranked UCLA. And in the Palmetto Bowl, South Carolina took down their big rival Clemson. It was just carnage everywhere.
So after all that madness, what does the aftermath even look like? As you can imagine, the top 25 got put through a paper shredder. Let's take a look at who took the biggest tumbles and who climbed the highest on the ladder of chaos. The falls were pretty steep. Both Michigan and Texas A&M took a 6-spot tumble right out of the top 10, and then you had teams like Notre Dame and UTSA. Poof! They just vanished from the top 25 completely. But hey, one team's chaos is another team's opportunity. Ohio State and Penn State seized the moment, climbing into perfect position to fight for the Big Ten title and a playoff bye. And look at teams like South Carolina and UCLA. They rode those huge upset wins right into the top 20.
And this table right here. This tells the story at the very top. Georgia managed to hang on to number 1, but look at the rest. Those 4 spots right behind them, the ones that get you that all-important first-round bye in the new playoff, completely reconfigured. Michigan's out, Penn State's knocking on the door, and Ohio State has leapfrogged Duke. It's a whole new world.
So that brings us to the biggest question of all, right? What in the world does this mean for the 12-team college football playoff? Well, to put it simply, the projected bracket has been thrown into a complete tailspin. The difference is just incredible. Look at the left. That was the projection before Saturday. Georgia, Duke, Ohio State, and Michigan all getting a week off. Now, look at the right. Michigan is out of the bye, forced into a dangerous first-round game. Ohio State and Duke have swapped places. And hey, how about Texas Tech? They now find themselves in that coveted top 4. It is a completely different ballgame. And if you think the chaos is over, you are very, very wrong. The dust hasn't even begun to settle. Because now, this weekend's conference championship games have an insane amount of weight on them. The chaos isn't over. It's just entering its final winner-take-all stage.
I mean, just look at this. The Big Ten title game between Ohio State and Penn State is now basically a play-in game for the playoff. Over in the Big 12, Texas Tech has to defend that brand new top 4 ranking. Pretty much every single one of these games has massive national implications. These are playoff eliminators, plain and simple.
And you know, it wasn't just the team fortunes that got scrambled this weekend. The ripple effects from all this chaos also completely turned the race for the Heisman Trophy, the sport's biggest individual award, right on its head. One game on this stage can change everything. And what a change it was! Check this out. Indiana's Fernando Mendoza had a monster game and is now rocketed into the lead. Meanwhile, last week's co-favorite, Kevin Jennings from SMU, fell all the way to 4th place, and his team didn't even play. It just shows you how volatile this race is heading into the absolute final weekend. So, there you have it. Rivalry Week provided the pure, uncut chaos. And now, Championship Week is set to provide the clarity. We went from a pretty stable picture to a wide-open, anything-can-happen race in just 48 hours. And that leaves us with one final thrilling question. With everything on the line, who's going to step up and punch their ticket?
Welcome to Debate. We are looking at the Oregon State Beavers 2025 season. An incredible run. They finished ranked 11, sitting at 11-1, and are now headed to a massive playoff game against Arizona State. But the real story here, the one everyone is talking about, is the gamble. First-year head coach Caleb Ward, they're calling him the architect, he benched his starting quarterback Malik Murphy, while the team was on paper sitting pretty at 5-1.
Yeah, and it's the kind of move that gets you fired if it fails. Ward puts in Gabari Johnson, and, well, the narrative now is that this masterstroke is what defined the season. But I think that's the question we have to answer. Did Caleb Ward actually architect a masterpiece? Or did he just, inherit a team with a top 20 defense and an elite running back that probably would have won 11 games no matter who was taking the snaps?
I'm firmly on the side of the architect. I think that quarterback switch was the absolute catalyst. It took a team that was frankly just surviving on talent and turned them into a legitimate title contender.
And I'm going to argue the exact opposite. The foundation, and I'm talking specifically about Anthony Hankerson's running and that suffocating defense, that was the engine of the team. The quarterback switch gets the headlines because it's dramatic, but the guys in the trenches are the ones who won these games.
Okay, so let's start with that 5-1 record, because you're right, it looks fine. But if you actually watch the tape from those games, the offense was stalling. I mean, Caleb Ward was brought in to install his Bible offensive scheme, this modern high-efficiency system. Under Murphy, we saw a very hard ceiling in the Duke game. Murphy threw 3 interceptions, they lose 37-24. Ward saw right there that against elite teams, just managing the game was not going to be enough. He didn't wait for the season to collapse. He proactively put Gabari Johnson in to unlock the vertical passing game. That's not just coaching. That's elevation.
You call it elevation. I call it panic over a single bad afternoon. You're completely ignoring the fact that Malik Murphy led this very same team to a 42-10 demolition of Oregon, their biggest rival. You don't accidentally beat Oregon by 30 points. The reality is by that point mid-season, this defense was already ranked 19th in the country. They were strangling opponents. I mean, honestly, Ward could have put a wildly average quarterback under center and still won 10 games. just because the defense gave the offense incredible field position week after week.
But you can't just look at the Oregon game in a vacuum. Look at the efficiency shift the very moment Johnson took over. In his debut against Iowa State, Johnson starts out 10 for 10 passing. Then later, against Minnesota, he completes 80% of his throws. I mean, that is the literal definition of the architect's vision, precision. Murphy was gritty, I'll give him that. But Johnson was surgical. He was fulfilling Ward's mandate to develop players faster by operating the scheme exactly how it was drawn up.
But look at the context of that efficiency. In that very same Iowa State game you mentioned, Anthony Hankerson ran for 163 yards and 3 touchdowns. This is a guy who's currently second in the voting for the Doak Walker Award. That's for the best running back in the entire nation. So when your running back is averaging nearly 7 yards a carry, the opposing defense has to put 8 men in the box just to slow him down. Of course, Johnson went 10 for 10. He was throwing into wide open windows because everyone was terrified of Hankerson. Johnson's stats are, well, they're a luxury that was paid for by a dominant ground game.
It's symbiotic, sure, but the offense evolved. Look at week 2 against Fresno State. That was a 6-3 win. It was ugly. That was the defense carrying the team model you're talking about. Now, fast forward to week 14 against Washington State. 52 points. Johnson threw for over 200 yards on just 14 attempts. They went from winning rock fights to dropping 50 burgers. You do not get that kind of explosive evolution just by handing the ball off. You need a trigger man who can punish a defense for stacking the box. Johnson did that. Murphy didn't.
And yet, in that Week 14 blowout, the run game still churned out over 230 yards. And the defense forced multiple turnovers. The formula didn't actually change. The window dressing did. Look, I'm not saying Johnson played poorly, but giving Ward the architect title implies he built something new. I think he just leaned on very traditional football values, a bruising run game and a defense that bails you out. The Bible scheme is getting the credit, but the players doing the dirty work got them the wins.
I think the distinction really lies in the trajectory. I see this season as a triumph of scheme and some very bold decision-making. Ward risked his locker room to raise the team's ceiling, and the scoreboard proved him right.
And I maintain that the roster was so robust that the risk was minimal. The defense and Hankerson provided a safety net that allowed the coach to tinker around without any real consequence.
Well, we're going to find out whose theory holds water pretty soon. The playoff game against Arizona State is the ultimate stress test. If Gabari Johnson can dissect a playoff-caliber defense, then the architect looks like a genius.
Exactly. And if they win, 13-10 on the back of the run game and 2 defensive scores, I expect an apology. It should be a fascinating watch either way.
That's all the time we have. Thanks for listening to The Debate.
And that's a wrap on this edition of State of the Beavers. Thanks for spending some time in the lodge with us today. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe on your favorite platform and leave us a review. It really helps the colony grow. Big thanks to our production team and, most importantly, to you for listening. Keep building, keep grinding, and we'll catch you on the next one. Until next time, this has been the State of the Beavers. Stay sharp out there.